Have you ever met someone for the third time and still could not remember their name? What makes it even more awkward is that you remember everything else about them clearly. They smile at you and say, "It's been so long. How have you been?" And suddenly your mind goes blank. Not the kind of blank where the name is on the tip of your tongue. Not the kind where you feel you might remember it in a second. It is simply gone. So you stand there, nodding and smiling, trying to stretch the conversation for a few more sentences while secretly hoping someone else will walk over and say their name first. Many people even develop their own survival skills for moments like this. They call the person bro, man, you, or carefully steer the conversation toward general topics so no one notices they have not used the person's name even once. If you have ever been in that situation, you know exactly how it feels. It is a small kind of embarrassment, but a very real one. You start blaming yourself. Why is my memory so bad? They remember me, but I cannot even remember their name. Then you begin to wonder whether there is something wrong with your memory. But there is something many people do not realize. You have not forgotten that person. You remember what they do for a living. You remember the story they told you last time. You might even remember sitting with them at a friend's house, drinking together and talking late into the night. You remember them talking about how stressful work had been. You remember the moment they raised their glass and said, "Whatever happens, we'll deal with it." You remember all of that vividly, almost as if it happened yesterday. There is only one thing your brain failed to hold on to: their name. And this is the surprising part. In psychology, there is a well-known phenomenon called the Baker-Baker paradox. The name sounds strange, but the idea is actually very simple. Imagine you meet two people on the same evening. One person's last name is Baker. The other person works as a baker. A few days later, you are much more likely to remember the person who works as a baker than the person whose name is Baker, even though you only met both of them once. Why does this happen? Because a job has meaning. When someone says, "I'm a baker," your brain immediately creates images: flour on the table, warm bread coming out of the oven, the smell of pastries, early mornings, an apron, a bakery full of light. A profession activates an entire network of meaning in your mind. It connects to things you have seen, known, imagined, and felt before. But a name is different. A name is often just a sound, a label. Your brain has very little to attach it to. There is no image, no smell, no story, no clear meaning. It is just a string of sounds that passes through the air, and the human brain does not store sound very well by itself. It stores meaning, connections, emotions, and stories. Things without clear meaning can easily slip away. If you grew up in the United States in the 1990s or early 2000s, you may have noticed this early in life. In every classroom, there were always classmates whose names you remembered instantly. Not because you tried hard, but because their names were attached to stories. Maybe you were called to the board together by the teacher. Maybe you whispered to each other during class. Maybe you secretly ate snacks during a sleepy lesson. Maybe you rode your bicycles home together on the familiar road after school. Their names were tied to dozens of memories. Your brain did not need to force itself to remember. It naturally held on because those names were connected to something meaningful. But there were also classmates you studied with for years, yet every time you needed to call their name, you had to sneak a look at the class list. It was not because you did not care. It was because your brain remembered something else. It remembered moments, stories, and feelings. A name is only a label. What you were remembering was the real person behind it, but that is still not the whole story. There is another psychological effect that helps explain this even further. It is called the next in line effect. In simple terms, when you are in a conversation and you know your turn to speak is coming, your brain starts turning inward. You are no longer fully focused on the person speaking. Instead, you begin thinking about yourself. What should I say next? Am I talking too much? Does this sound strange? Are they judging me? Do I look awkward? At that moment, your brain is busy. It is processing anxiety, self-awareness, and emotion, and right at that moment, the other person says their name. A new sound appears, but your brain does not have enough space to process it. It is busy reading the atmosphere in the room, reading the other person's expression, and reading your own nervousness. So the name passes by like a light breeze, then disappears. This is not a failure of memory, it is a failure of attention. More precisely, it is the result of inner distraction, something many people live with every day without even realizing it. Think about this for a moment. In the past week, how many names have you forgotten, even though you still remember the stories? You remember someone talking about a trip they took. You remember someone telling you how stressful their job has been. You remember the look in their eyes when they mentioned their family. But their name? You may have to pause and search for it. Still, there is another side to this that should be said honestly. The person whose name is forgotten has feelings too. If you have ever introduced yourself to someone several times and they still forgot your name, you may have felt as if you were not important enough to be remembered. It is not a deep wound, but it is a small sadness, a quiet feeling of not being noticed. Because a person's name is not just a sound. It is one of the ways we are recognized, called, and seen. When someone remembers your name, they are saying something without needing to say it out loud. You matter to me. Understanding the psychology behind forgetting names does not mean we should ignore the feelings of the person being forgotten. That matters too. But if you are someone who often forgets names, there is a truth few people tell you. You are not necessarily careless. Your brain may simply be prioritizing something else. Some people are very good at remembering labels, names, numbers, lists, and faces. They meet someone once and remember their name immediately, but if you ask them about the story that person told, they may only remember it vaguely. Other people's brains work differently. They remember stories, emotions, the atmosphere of a conversation, and the way someone looked into their eyes when they spoke. That does not mean you forgot the person, it means you remembered them in another way. Maybe you forgot their name, but you remember exactly what they said. You remember how they laughed. You remember the kind of energy they brought into the room. You remember the moment their eyes lit up while talking about something they loved. You remember when they paused halfway through a story and said, "Never mind, it's an old story." You may even remember the things they never said out loud. Because a person's name is only a sound given to them before they had done anything memorable. But what you remember is the real part of them, their stories, their emotions, and the moments they left behind. So yes, maybe you forgot their name, but you did not forget them, and sometimes that may be the kind of remembering that comes closest to who they truly are.